The man behind the wheel. It was early morning on a dusty road near a small rest stop outside Amarillo. The sun had not fully risen, and a sleepy orange hue spread across the sky. The gas station lights flickered faintly, and the air smelled of diesel, old coffee, and tired stories. A big 18-wheeler pulled into the lot, rumbling low like an old beast settling after a long journey. The truck stopped slowly beside a row of parking slots made for rigs. The driver, a middle-aged man with a round face and kind eyes, stepped down from the cabin. He wore worn-out boots, faded jeans, and a jacket that had clearly seen thousands of miles. His name was Charlie, and he had been driving trucks for more than 20 years. Today he looked extra tired. There was a small photo of a little girl taped to his dashboard. It was his daughter, Lila, and she was the only reason he kept going. Charlie walked into the small diner connected to the gas station, hoping for a cup of hot coffee and maybe some eggs if he could afford it. He took a seat near the window, rubbing his hands together, his knuckles swollen from years of hard work. But peace wasn't going to last. The sharp roar of motorcycles broke the morning. Quiet. 5 bikers pulled into the lot, each one louder than the last. They wore matching leather vests, sunglasses, and carried an attitude as thick as the smoke they left behind. They parked their bikes in front of the diner like they owned the place. One of them, tall with a skull tattoo on his bald head, spotted Charlie's truck and grinned. "What kind of grandpa still drives one of those rusty dinosaurs?" he said loudly, laughing with his crew. Inside the diner, Charlie kept his head down. He had heard it all before. Old man, road rat, low-life trucker. But he also knew something they didn't. He had survived things most of them couldn't even imagine. Still, he stayed quiet. Not because he was scared, because he knew silence was sometimes louder than any words. One of the bikers, a younger guy with sharp features and cruel eyes, stepped into the diner. He looked around like a hunter in a petting zoo. He spotted Charlie and walked over, pretending to stumble and bumping into him. "Oops, sorry, old man," he said, smirking. "Didn't see you there. You blend in with the chairs." Charlie looked up slowly, not with anger but with calm. "No problem," he said. "Some folks just weren't raised to say excuse me. That should have been the end of it." But it wasn't. The biker stepped closer, knocking over Charlie's coffee. "Whoops again," he sneered, and that's when someone opened the diner door behind them. The bell jingled softly. The morning light came in with him. He wore a simple black t-shirt, faded jeans, and sunglasses. His walk was easy but quiet, like someone used to slipping in and out without being noticed. He looked like just another traveler. But he wasn't. It was Keanu Reeves. No one recognized him at first. He just took a seat in the back, not far from the window, and watched. The waitress greeted him with a smile, and he nodded politely. Then his eyes locked onto the scene with Charlie and the biker. Keanu didn't move, didn't speak. But his stare was sharp and still, like a quiet storm waiting. The biker leaned in again, now pushing Charlie's plate across the table. "What's in it for a guy like you, huh?" he asked. "Still hauling junk for a few coins? You should have quit long ago." Charlie finally stood up. He was slow, steady, and didn't raise his voice. "I work because I have someone to care for," he said. "And that gives me more strength than you'll ever understand." The biker laughed, but it sounded nervous now. There was something in Charlie's voice that cut through pride like a knife through paper. And then, the door swung open again. This time, the rest of the bikers walked in. Their leader with the skull tattoo came to the table. "We got a problem here?" he said, looking at Charlie, then at his younger crew member. Keanu watched them closely now. His hand rested gently on the table, fingers tapping. Not out of fear, out of calculation. His mind was already 4 steps ahead, reading the room, reading the danger. Charlie shook his head. "No problem, just a misunderstanding." "Nah, sounds like you've got a big mouth," the leader said, cracking his knuckles. Keanu finally stood up. The diner fell quiet. He walked slowly toward them, and for a moment no one even breathed. Something about the way he moved made them pause. Not a sound in the room except his boots touching the floor. "Actually," Keanu said softly, I think it's you who misunderstood something. The leader turned, confused. Who the hell are you? Keanu looked at Charlie. He's a man, doing his job. He's earned every mile on that truck, and you don't get to treat people like that. The waitress stepped back. People in the diner leaned forward, in silence. Even the cook peeked out from behind the counter. The skull tattoo biker took a step forward. You got a problem too? Keanu smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was calm. Too calm. No, but I've handled bigger problems than this. Suddenly, tension filled the room like fire waiting for a spark. The bikers looked around, now unsure. Someone in the back whispered, "Is that Keanu Reeves?" And that whisper changed everything. The younger biker's eyes widened. The skull tattoo leader blinked and took a small step back. The crew looked at one another, confused, then nervous. People started pulling out phones, recording. But Keanu didn't move. He just stood there beside Charlie like he belonged there, like he always had. Charlie looked at Keanu with quiet gratitude. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. Sometimes kindness doesn't need a voice. The bikers started to leave one by one. No fights, no words, just silence. They had come looking for trouble and found something stronger. Presence, honor, quiet strength. As the door closed behind them, the room slowly exhaled. Keanu sat back down, picked up a menu, and said casually to the waitress, "I'll have what he's having, and add some pancakes." Charlie sat down too, still in shock. "Thank you," he said quietly. Keanu nodded. "You already fought the hardest battles, my friend. I just reminded them you're not alone." And for the first time that morning, Charlie smiled. Whispers on the highway the next morning came quietly, but something in the air had changed. The sun was up early, casting golden light across the open highway. Trucks moved like slow giants down the interstate while birds flew over the fields in lazy circles. Life had returned to normal, or so it seemed. Inside his truck, Charlie turned the ignition. The engine groaned to life. He had one last sip of coffee in his thermos and carefully placed the photo of his daughter back on the dashboard. But he wasn't in a rush to drive away just yet. He kept thinking about the man from the diner. Keanu hadn't just stepped in to stop the bikers. He had done it in a way that left everyone stunned. Calm, respectful, powerful. Most people would have yelled, made threats, maybe even thrown a punch. But Keanu had done something much harder. He stayed composed. And that had shaken the bikers more than any fight ever could. Just as Charlie was about to pull away, he noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under his wiper blade. He got out, picked it up, and opened it slowly. The handwriting was neat and simple. It read, "You're not invisible. Keep driving. Someone out there still sees your fight." Charlie stood there for a while, holding the note like it was made of gold. He didn't know Keanu Reeves had followed him outside that morning. Didn't know he'd left that message while Charlie was checking his tires. But now it felt like a spark had been lit in a heart that had grown cold from loneliness. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the biker gang was having a very different kind of morning. They had gathered in a grimy garage behind a closed-down factory, their bikes lined up like soldiers. The air smelled like burnt rubber and stale beer. The leader, skull tattoo, paced the room, rubbing the back of his neck. "Who was that guy?" one of the bikers asked. "Looked like someone who knew how to handle himself," another said. The younger one, the one who had started the mess, just sat in the corner tapping his foot nervously. "Man, people are talking about it already. The video's on the internet. Some folks think it really was Keanu Reeves." "Shut up," Skull Tattoo snapped. "Even if it was, what's he gonna do? He's just an actor." But he didn't believe his own words. None of them did. They had humiliated a man who had done nothing wrong. And worse, they had been humbled in public by someone who didn't lift a fist. In their world, that was a deeper bruise than a broken jaw. Back on the road, Keanu was behind the wheel of his black Mustang, driving silently. He had no destination. Sometimes he just drove to feel the road, to stay close to real people, not Fans, not flashing lights. Just real people like Charlie. As he drove past quiet farms and broken motels, he thought about the waitress too. Her name had been Clara. She was kind, quick with a smile, but something behind her eyes told him she carried stories heavier than trays of food. He remembered how she had stayed calm during the tension, how she had subtly moved a young girl away from the table when the bikers came in. Protective, thoughtful. People like her, people like Charlie, they were the ones who kept the world from falling apart. And yet they were treated like shadows, unnoticed, unthanked, unprotected. Keanu didn't like that. By noon, he pulled into another small town to grab fuel. The station was quiet. No bikers, no drama, just the gentle whir of pumps and the smell of sun on asphalt. But as he walked toward the counter to pay, he noticed something odd. A large truck, the same model as Charlie's, was pulled over to the side of the lot. The hood was open. Smoke was rising from the engine. And sitting beside the wheel was a little girl, no more than 10 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit. Keanu walked over slowly. "Everything all right?" he asked gently. The girl looked up, her eyes red from crying. She didn't answer, but pointed toward the back of the truck. Keanu followed her gaze and found a man lying on the ground, groaning softly. It was Charlie. "Charlie?" Keanu knelt down beside him. Charlie blinked up, confused, then recognized the face. "You again?" "Yeah," Keanu said softly. "What happened?" Charlie tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "Fuel line cracked. Engine overheated. I went to check it and must have slipped. Twisted my leg bad." Keanu looked at the leg. It was swelling fast. "Your daughter?" he asked. Charlie nodded. "Lila, she was sleeping in the truck." Keanu looked back at the girl and gave her a warm smile. "Hey, Lila, I think your dad's gonna need a little help." He pulled out his phone and called for a tow truck. Then he helped Charlie up, gently moving him into a shaded spot near the bench. He brought cold water from the station's fridge and gave one bottle to Charlie, one to Lila. "Why are you helping us?" Charlie asked, still dazed. Keanu paused. "Because too many people look the other way when good folks struggle, and I've had enough of that." Charlie's eyes filled with tears. Not from pain, but from being seen. Minutes later, the tow truck arrived. The mechanic, a local named Frank, recognized Keanu immediately, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he looked at Charlie's truck and whistled. "This'll take some time," he said. "You folks got anywhere to go?" Keanu spoke before Charlie could. "I'll cover a motel nearby. And his repairs." Charlie tried to protest, but Keanu held up a hand. "No arguments. Just accept. Kindness when it finds you." Charlie nodded slowly, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. As the sun began to dip again behind the trees, Keanu walked with Lila to the motel lobby while Charlie limped behind, supported by Frank. "Do you always do stuff like this?" Lila asked him softly. Keanu looked down at her. "Not always, but when I can, I try." "You're like a quiet superhero," she whispered. He smiled. "Maybe, but heroes wear all kinds of faces, even truck drivers." The night settled in gently, and the motel room lights blinked on. The world didn't change in a day. But for one father and his daughter, the road felt a little less lonely. And somewhere in the shadows, the biker gang was beginning to plan something foolish. Because they didn't like the way the story ended back at that diner. But they had no idea what Keanu was really capable of. Not yet. The storm ahead, the wind carried a strange silence across the open highway that evening, as if even the sky was holding its breath. At a quiet motel just off Route 64, a little girl lay asleep with a stuffed rabbit beside her, and her father sat in the corner nursing his swollen leg, still trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Outside, under the flickering, orange glow of a street lamp, Keanu Reeves sat on a wooden bench, leaning back slightly, looking up at the stars. His jacket was folded next to him, his hands rested on his knees, but his mind was far from quiet. His phone buzzed. He looked down at the message. "Unknown number. You should have stayed out of it." We don't forget faces, especially yours. Keanu stared at the screen for a long second, then locked it and put the phone away. He wasn't surprised. The biker gang had taken a hit to their pride, and men like them didn't let go of things easily. But he had seen their kind before. Bullies in leather, anger hiding fear, and most of all, the belief that kindness is weakness. They were wrong, and soon they would learn just how wrong. Across town, in the back room of a rundown bar called the Iron Claw, Skull Tattoo sat hunched over a table covered in oil stains, a bottle of whiskey beside him. 4 of his men were with him. They were silent, each lost in their thoughts. In front of them was a tablet playing the diner video, over and over again. It's got over 200,000 views, the younger biker mumbled. And the comments, people are laughing at us. Skull Tattoo slammed the bottle down. This is what happens when outsiders think they can humiliate us. He didn't even touch us, one of them said quietly. That's worse, another growled. He didn't need to. They had done more than lose face. They had been stripped of power publicly, and now they wanted it back. You find out where that trucker is? Skull Tattoo asked. The younger one nodded. Motel on 64, same truck. He's there now, and that actor, and he's with him. Skull Tattoo's lips curled into a grin. Good. Then we'll send a little message. Meanwhile, inside the motel, Keanu helped Charlie set up pillows to elevate his leg. You don't have to keep helping me, Charlie said, his voice soft. I'm not doing it because I have to, Keanu replied. I'm doing it because it's right. Charlie looked down. I was just a trucker. Now I'm a burden. Keanu leaned forward. Don't ever say that. The miles you've driven, the nights you've spent alone, the birthdays you missed. To pay the bills, that's not weakness, that's strength. And your daughter? She sees you, I see you. Charlie didn't respond, but his eyes said enough. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Sharp. Loud. Not friendly. Keanu's eyes narrowed. He stood up slowly, motioned for Charlie to stay quiet, and moved to the door. He opened it just a crack and saw a shadowy figure walk away, laughing softly. He stepped out. No one was there, just the wind and the sound of engines fading in the distance. He looked down. A small box had been placed at the door. He picked it up carefully and opened it. Inside was a burnt motorcycle, Clef, and a photo of Charlie's truck taken just a few hours ago. Keanu clenched his jaw. This wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. They weren't going to let it go. He returned inside, locked the door behind him, and sat at the small desk. He pulled out his laptop, opened a private secure app, and started typing. It wasn't to call the police, he knew better. Sometimes help doesn't come from uniforms. Sometimes it comes from people who owe you favors. By the next morning, the motel parking lot wasn't empty anymore. 3 unfamiliar cars had arrived. From them stepped people who didn't look like tourists or truckers. One was a woman with a scar down her cheek. Another was a short man with sharp eyes and a camera around his neck. The third was a quiet guy with long hair, sunglasses, and a military backpack. They didn't speak much, but they nodded at Keanu as if they already knew the mission. Charlie stepped out onto the balcony with a crutch and looked at the newcomers. Friends of yours? Keanu nodded. Something like that. You really think those bikers are gonna come back? Keanu looked toward the highway. I know they will. Later that day, Clara, the diner waitress, appeared at the motel. Her car was old, her clothes simple. She carried a small cooler and handed it to Charlie. I heard what happened, she said. Brought you some sandwiches and juice for Lila. Charlie tried to speak, but emotion caught in his throat. Thank you, he whispered. You didn't have to. I know, Clara said. But someone helped me once when I thought I didn't matter. Sometimes we pass that forward. That night, Keanu's new team stayed outside in shifts, watching, waiting. Inside, Lila sat beside Keanu reading a book. Do you think they're bad people? She asked softly. Keanu thought for a moment. I think they're people who forgot what it feels like to be hurt. So now they try to make others feel it. Is that why you didn't fight them? Maybe. Or maybe I just knew words could hurt more. She nodded. You're different. Keanu smiled. So are you. But as the moon climbed higher, engines began to growl in the distance. The team outside stood up. The motel lights flickered. Keanu stepped out onto the balcony. A row of motorcycles rolled in, headlights like angry eyes. The same gang. But now, they weren't here to talk. They were here to take something back. Skull Tattoo stepped off his bike first. He looked up at the motel and shouted, "Come out, hero!" Keanu didn't move. Not yet. You think you're some kind of savior? Skull Tattoo yelled. You humiliated us in front of the world. You think we'll let that go? Keanu finally stepped forward, standing at the edge of the balcony, staring down. You came all this way? He said calmly. Just to lose again? The bikers laughed, but it was nervous laughter. The calm in Keanu's voice rattled them. You think this is funny? Skull Tattoo shouted. You and that old man think you're safe? Keanu pointed to the roof. 3 red dots appeared on the chests of 3 bikers. Snipers. His team had set them up hours earlier. I didn't come here to fight, Keanu said. But I came prepared. The gang froze. No one moved. You're outnumbered, Skull Tattoo growled. Maybe, Keanu replied, but you're outclassed. One biker stepped forward and then a shot rang out, not a bullet, just a flash near his feet, a warning. They backed off. Skull Tattoo gritted his teeth. This isn't over. Keanu leaned on the balcony railing. Maybe not, but for tonight it is. And with that, the gang slowly retreated, their bikes rumbling into the night like wounded wolves. Keanu turned to his team. Thank you. They nodded, then disappeared one by one like ghosts returning to shadows. Inside the motel, Lila peeked through the curtain and whispered, You didn't have to scare them away like that. Keanu smiled. I didn't do it to scare them. I did it so you could sleep safe. And outside, the wind carried a message, clear and quiet. You don't mess with people who walk with truth. The hidden road, the motel was quiet the next morning. Too quiet. Even the birds seemed hesitant to sing. Inside room 14, Keanu Reeves stood at the window with a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. The sun had barely risen, casting soft light through the curtain. Outside, the parking lot looked peaceful again, but Keanu knew better. Peace was often the skin stretched over deeper wounds. On the small couch near the bed, Lila was asleep, holding her stuffed rabbit. Charlie was resting too, but the lines on his face told a different story. He hadn't truly slept, not with the memory of the engines echoing in his head, not with the fear that they might return. Keanu took a deep breath and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the kind that carried whispers from far away. He looked down the road, the same road where the gang had rolled in like a storm last night, but something still felt wrong. His phone buzzed again. This time it was from Clara, the waitress from the diner. Clara, they came by this morning, asking about you. Said they were just checking in. I didn't tell them anything, but you need to know. They're watching. Keanu's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. He just slipped the phone back into his pocket and started walking. He needed answers. Not about the gang, but about why they cared so much. Something wasn't adding up. People like that didn't hold grudges unless they were protecting something. Keanu returned to his Mustang, climbed in and pulled away from the motel. He had one lead left, an old friend who once worked undercover in biker gangs. A man named Mitch. Mitch ran a motorcycle repair shop just off Route 17. It was disguised as a dusty garage with a rusted sign and peeling paint, but it had more cameras than most banks. Inside, Mitch was wiping his hands when he saw Keanu step in. I was wondering when you'd show up, Mitch said with a grin. Coffee's still terrible. I'm not here for the coffee, Keanu replied. Mitch nodded, tossing the rag aside. You never are. What's going on? Keanu told him everything. The diner, Charlie, the gang, the threats, the glove, the warning, the attempted return. Mitch listened closely, his face darkening. That gang, he finally said. They're Not just bikers. They're running something bigger. Smuggling, weapons, sometimes even people. Keanu stared at him. People? He repeated, his voice low. Mitch nodded. Yeah, especially truck routes. They use truck stops and roadside motels to move people. Hidden, in cargo. And they threaten drivers to keep quiet. Some cooperate. Most don't survive. Keanu's hands clenched. He thought of Charlie. He thought of Lila. Why Charlie? He asked. Maybe he saw something, Mitch replied. Or maybe they thought he did. Keanu stood up. I need proof. Something to stop them before they come back. Mitch walked to the back of the garage and pulled out a black case. He opened it, revealing a drone. This thing sees everything, he said, and I know just the place to fly it. By sunset, Keanu and Mitch were parked on a hill overlooking the old factory near the edge of town, the same place the gang had been meeting. The place they thought no one watched. The drone launched silently, zipping into the air. On the small screen inside the car, they watched as it flew over the building, capturing everything. Motorcycles lined up. Men moving crates into trucks. Weapons. Money. And in one corner, something worse. A small metal container with no markings. And through a crack in the door, eyes. Terrified eyes. Keanu's chest tightened. They're trafficking, he said. Mitch nodded. You were right. This isn't just about pride. Keanu leaned back. He didn't blink, didn't breathe for a moment. Then he said quietly, we need to free them. Tonight. But back at the motel, danger had already arrived. 2 members of the gang had returned, quiet and unannounced. They parked a white van across the road, using binoculars to watch the building. One of them, the younger biker, whispered, That's the girl, the daughter. Yeah, the other said. Grab her and he'll follow. Inside, Charlie was reading to Lila from a children's book. He paused when he saw a shadow move across the window. Something felt wrong. A chill crawled up his spine. He stood slowly, grabbed his phone, and called Keanu. They're here, Charlie whispered. Outside. Keanu didn't waste a second. He handed the drone to Mitch, jumped in the Mustang, and tore down the road like fire in his veins. At the motel, Lila peeked through the curtain and saw the van. 2 men were stepping out. Dad? She said, voice shaking. Charlie limped to the door, locking it, then pulled Lila close. Stay here, he whispered. No matter what. The men knocked once, then twice, then louder. Keanu's car screeched into the lot. He stepped out slowly, walking toward the van without hesitation. The bikers turned, surprised. You, one of them growled. Yeah, Keanu said softly. Me. This ain't your business. It is now. Move or we take the girl. Keanu didn't blink. You won't touch her, he said, but you're welcome to try. They moved toward him, confident. Then headlights flicked on across the street. Mitch had arrived with the footage playing live on a tablet and more. 3 local officers who owed Mitch favors. You're done, Keanu said. I know what you're running. I've seen the containers. I've seen the faces. The bikers froze. Panic flickered in their eyes. You think you can stop the whole gang? One hissed. Keanu stepped closer. No, but I can stop you, and that's a good start. They lunged, but Keanu moved faster. 1 strike. 2. He didn't fight to impress. He fought to end it. Within seconds, both bikers were down. Mitch and the officers ran in, cuffing them. Charlie opened the door. Lila ran into Keanu's arms. You came, she whispered. Always, he said. The officers placed the bikers into the squad car. 1 officer turned to Keanu. We'll need the footage. You'll have it, Keanu replied. But I'm not done yet. Mitch nodded. We finish this tonight. Keanu looked back at Charlie. Can you keep her safe? He asked. Charlie nodded slowly. I will. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. You're stronger than you know. And with that he turned, walking into the night with a purpose burning behind his calm. Because now it wasn't just about a truck driver. It was about every silent person who had ever been bullied, threatened, threatened, or forgotten. And Keanu Reeves wasn't going to let it continue. Not on his watch. The factory of silence, the town, looked peaceful from the highway. Lights blinked in warm windows. Trucks rolled by slowly. Birds returned to their nests. But just beyond the quiet edges of this place, inside an old factory with broken windows and faded brick walls, something dark had taken root. It was almost midnight when Keanu Reeves stood on the hill again with Mitch beside him. The air was colder than before, sharper, as if it too sensed what was about to happen. In the distance, the old building sat like a sleeping beast. Half of it was covered in ivy. The other half pulsed with dim lights from within. Motorcycles lined the side of the loading bay, and 3 large trucks were parked nearby, ready to move. Men with radios patrolled the area. Some had weapons. Others just stood with crossed arms, watching the night like they owned it. Keanu crouched beside Mitch, staring through binoculars. "How many?" Keanu asked. "At least a dozen," Mitch replied. "Maybe more inside." Keanu nodded. "And the container?" Mitch pointed. "Far end of the lot. Guarded. That's where they're keeping them." Inside that metal box, behind cold walls and locked doors, were people, mostly women and a few kids, frightened, confused, and unsure if rescue would ever come. They had been told to stay quiet. They had been told no one would find them. But they didn't know who was watching from the shadows. Keanu didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "We go in now." Mitch looked at him. "You sure?" "I won't sleep until they're out." Mitch nodded. "Then let's make some noise." But Keanu didn't want noise. He wanted precision. They split up. Mitch stayed on the hill with the drone controls. His job was to keep an eye from above and signal movement. Keanu moved down the hill alone, slipping through the dark like a shadow. He had done things like this before. Not for movies. In real life. Few people knew, and fewer believed it. But when you've seen real pain, real fear, you stop caring about what people believe. Keanu crept around the back of the factory, passing broken fences and old metal drums. He moved quietly, every step measured. He listened. Voices. 3 guards near the rear door. He crouched behind a crate and waited. Mitch's voice buzzed softly through the earpiece. "Now." Keanu moved fast, silent. He grabbed the first guard by the collar, twisted, and dropped him without a sound. The second turned, too late. One strike to the jaw, another to the ribs. Down. The third tried to run. Keanu caught him by the back of the jacket, pinned him to the wall, and whispered, "Don't." He tied the 3 with a nylon cord he carried in his pack and dragged them behind a dumpster. Then he slipped inside. The factory smelled like oil and rust. The floor was stained. Crates of weapons and boxes full of fake shipping labels were stacked everywhere. But Keanu didn't stop to study them. He moved through the hallways, past rooms with flickering lights and old machines. Then he found the hallway leading to the far storage bay, the place where the container was kept. But there was a problem. 6 bikers stood between him and that door. He couldn't take them all at once, not without noise. So he chose differently. He walked forward. Openly. "Hey!" one of the bikers shouted, reaching for a weapon. Keanu raised his hands. "Just here to talk." "You again?" growled one of the older men. "You don't give up." "Neither do people worth fighting for," Keanu said softly. The leader of this small group stepped forward. His name was Riggs. Thick arms, crooked nose, and a voice like gravel. He laughed. "You think this is a movie? This is real, pal. Then act like it's real." Keanu replied. "You've got people locked in that container. Scared, hungry. Some of them are children. This is your last chance to walk away with a little bit of your soul left." Riggs paused. His eyes narrowed. "You talk like you know us." "I know pain," Keanu said. "And I know what it makes people do. But this is something else. This is cowardice, hiding behind crates and threats and chains. You weren't born this way, so don't end this way." Silence. The men looked at each other. Riggs scoffed. "We got orders." Keanu nodded. I've got something stronger. And with that, the drone buzzed past the windows, flashing lights and projecting live footage of the operation onto the factory wall. Cameras hidden in helmets, images of the people inside the container, faces, names, fear. Then the voice of Mitch came through the factory speakers. To anyone listening, this place is compromised. Local enforcement is en route. This footage has already been sent to 5 news outlets and 3 law enforcement offices. Walk away now or go down in flames. The men froze. Riggs swore under his breath, and then something unexpected happened. One of the bikers, tall, thin, face covered in tattoos, dropped his weapon and said, "I didn't sign up for this, not with kids." Another followed. Me, neither. They walked away. Riggs shouted after them, "Cowards!" But 2 more dropped out. Now only Riggs and 1 man stood. Keanu stepped forward. "What's it going to be?" he asked. Riggs raised his fist, but it was already too late. Keanu moved, quick, precise. He blocked the punch, spun, and brought him down in 3 swift moves. The last biker just stood, stared, and stepped aside. Keanu ran to the container, locked. He pulled a crowbar from a tool cart nearby and pried it open. Inside, 10 people stared at him, wide-eyed, silent. He stepped in gently. "You're safe now," he said. "Come on." Slowly. Outside, Mitch pulled the Mustang around. Sirens echoed in the distance. When the last person stepped out, 1 little boy ran back inside and returned with a small dog, shivering. He looked up at Keanu and whispered, "Thank you." Keanu knelt beside him. No one gets left behind. The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights filled the factory windows. As officers stormed the building, Mitch walked up to Keanu, grinning. "You always did like the dramatic exits." Keanu smiled. "Only when it counts." They handed over the footage. Officers took statements. The people from the container were given blankets, water, and soft words, and Keanu, he just sat on the hood of his Mustang watching the stars again, until Charlie and Lila pulled up. Charlie got out slowly, his leg still bandaged. "You did it," he said. "We did it," Keanu replied. Lila ran up and hugged him. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." Keanu shook his head. "I just didn't want to stay silent anymore." Charlie looked at the factory, now full of police and flashing lights. "So what happens now?" he asked. Keanu looked down the road. "Now," he said softly, "we make sure people remember what truth looks like." The final mile. The town woke up the next morning to flashing news reports, bold headlines, and whispers in every corner. What had once been a sleepy stop on a forgotten highway was now on every screen. Illegal trafficking ring busted by mystery man. One article read, "Actor Keanu Reeves stops criminal operation," said another. But inside a small diner at the edge of town, where it all began, things were much quieter. Charlie sat at a corner booth, sipping hot coffee. Lila colored quietly beside him with a few crayons the waitress had given her. Across from them sat Keanu, calm as always, staring out the window like he was watching the wind itself. Nobody in the diner bothered him. A few recognized his face. A few whispered his name, but no one interrupted. There was something about the way he carried himself, humble still, like a man who didn't need applause to feel the value of what he'd done. Then, the bell above the diner door rang softly. A woman stepped in. Her clothes were clean but simple, and her eyes searched the room with purpose. She walked straight to the booth where they sat. "You're Keanu Reeves," she said gently. Keanu stood. "Yes, ma'am." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small weathered photo. "Do you know this girl?" she asked. Keanu looked closely. His heart dropped. It was one of the women from the container, the girl who hadn't spoken, the one who held a drawing of a sunset when she stepped out. "She's my daughter," the woman said. "Her name is Sophia. She disappeared 6 months ago." Charlie leaned in, surprised. "She was in that container?" The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I got a call this morning. They said she's safe. that someone saved her, that it was you. Keanu didn't say anything at first. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small, a folded drawing. He handed it to the woman. She opened it slowly. It was a child's drawing, crude but clear. A little girl holding hands with a tall man under a red sun. Written in soft letters at the bottom were the words, "My hero." The woman clutched it to her chest. "How do I thank you?" Keanu looked at Lila, then at Charlie. "By living," he said softly. "By holding her, by reminding her every day that she's not alone." She cried then, not loudly, just with the kind of emotion that comes from breaking and healing at the same time. And the diner, once again, fell into a sacred silence. A few hours later, Keanu walked out to the parking lot. The Mustang gleamed under the sun. The tow truck driver who had once helped Charlie was leaning against his rig nearby. "You leaving?" the driver asked. "For now," Keanu replied. Charlie and Lila joined him. "I don't know how to say goodbye," Charlie said. Keanu smiled. "Then don't. Just say, 'See you down the road.'" He knelt beside Lila and handed her a keychain, shaped like a tiny truck. "You're strong," he told her. "And your dad, he's a lion." She hugged him tightly. "You're our family now," she whispered. Keanu didn't answer, but his eyes did. He climbed into the Mustang and started the engine. It purred like a sleeping tiger. He pulled out slowly, waving once without looking back. But as he reached the edge of town, he saw something. A group of bikers. Not the ones from before. These were young, clean, nervous, holding signs that read "Sorry and we didn't know." He slowed. One of them stepped forward. "We left the gang," he said, "after the raid. We didn't want to be part of that anymore. We want to do something better." Keanu stepped out of the car. He looked each one in the eye. Then he asked, "What do you believe in?" One of the bikers replied, "Respect, change, the road, but for good." Keanu nodded. "Then start with this," he said, pulling a folded map from his glove compartment. "There's a shelter 2 towns over. They need hands, drivers, protection, food delivery. They help people escape bad situations. You want to ride for something real? Ride for them." They took the map, eyes wide, full of something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And as Keanu drove off again, his mind was quiet, but his heart was full. A few miles out of town, the road opened wide. Mountains rose in the distance. The sky turned into a soft canvas of orange and blue. He rolled the window down, let the wind hit his face, and smiled. He wasn't just an actor. He wasn't just a traveler. He was a reminder that kindness is strength, that silence can be powerful, and that even on the loneliest roads, someone out there still cares. In a world full of noise and speed, sometimes all it takes is one quiet voice to change everything. And Keanu Reeves was that voice. And that was the final mile of a story that began with a truck driver, a gang of bullies, and one man who refused to look away.